Hi, so today we're going to be talking about Neal and Wolf colour. So this is going to be going over everything to do with Neal and Wolf colour, how to use it, where everything sits in the colour wheel, the lightning curve, absolutely everything to do with how you use it and what services you'll be choosing for different clientele that we have in the salons. So we're going to be going over where everything sits from a 0.0 right up to a 0.9, so tone variations. But we're also going to be covering using the glossing service, using it as a toner, the high lift series, and using it as a semi, demi, and a permanent colour. So first things first, we're going to be covering the tones. So in Neal and Wolf, you have your naturals, which are 1 to 10. These are your base shades. They're intermixable, so you've got 129 intermixable shades. Your base shades 1 to 10 are more of a violet blue undertone, so they are more of a cooler variation. Your next set that you've got are the 0.0s, which are right next to the naturals. Your 0.0s are specially designed for white coverage. White coverage with different types of hair will mean different amounts that you use in your formulation. So if you're, for instance, working with 100% white hair, you're going to be using more of the 0.0 line, but only as a maximum of 50% in your colour. So say, for instance, they want, they like the look of an 8.3, but they have a lot of white hair. You're going to be needing to go with either an 8 or an 8.0, so half of that and then half of your 8.3. We will be covering a little bit more on the grey series a little bit later, but that's just a basic overlay of what the colour is at the moment. So then you've got your 0.1s. Your 0.1s are more of a green ash, so they do sit a little bit greener in the colour wheel. So bearing that in mind, you don't want to be using it over blonde hair, for instance, because of course when you mix green and obviously yellow together, it makes a nice lime sort of colour. So be wary of that. They do come up quite green, but on the flip side of that, they're absolutely incredible at covering reds. Your next set of tones are your 1-1s. Now, your double ones have got a lot of green pigment in them, so they are absolutely fantastic at getting rid of red tones and really strong red tones. So those ones are always ones to have in the cupboard, not necessarily using them all of the time, but they are absolutely fabulous at neutralising any strong red pigment. Your next set of tones are your 1-2s. So your 1-2s are your green ash mixed with your violet. So when you come into secondary tones, so when you look at, say, for instance, a 9-1-2, it will be on a level 9, but it will be 70% of the 0.1 and 30% of the 0.2. So you've got 70% green ash in there, but then you've got 30% of a violet pigment in there as well. So they are absolutely fabulous for getting rid of those reddy tones and through to like yellow tones as well. Then you've got your 0.15, which is a mixed tone. Now when you are looking at the Neal and Wolf colour chart, you're going to come across some of the shades that have a little mixing bowl next to them. And when you see that, it means that it's a mixed shade. So if you just look underneath the little hair swatch, say for instance on the 615, it tells you that you're looking at 6.1, 70% of that, and then 30% at 6.5, and that's how you mix that particular colour. So a 615 doesn't actually exist in a tube, but it is a mixable colour. It's just there as a demonstration as to what you can have colour-wise. Your next set of colours is the 0.21s. The 0.21s, so same as the one, similar as the 1-2s, but you've got 70% of a violet in there, and this time 30% of your ash in there. So again, dependent on what you'll need, sometimes you'll need more of a violet pigment to eliminate yellows, sometimes you'll need more of an ash green pigment to eliminate those red tones. So dependent on what you need will be dependent on which one you choose. Your next set of colours in there are the 2-3s. The 2-3s are beautiful. They're violet, but they've got that hint of warmth to them with the gold. And what that achieves is it achieves a real beautiful kind of pearlescent tone that's still really soft and ash, but it's got that pearlescent gold shimmer to it. So absolutely beautiful for achieving a really nice soft beige tone. Your next set of colours are the 0.3s. So the 0.3s are gold, they are predominantly yellow, so they sit right where yellow is in that colour wheel. Your next set are the 0.3 ones. So your 3 ones are gold, so 70% gold, but then with 30% of the green ash in there. So a muted golden version, so it's a really soft gold rather than being a very glowing gold. Your 0.33s are next, and they are your intense golds. So they are your real intense coverage golds. Absolutely fabulous for someone that wants a good gold tone throughout their hair, but doesn't want it on orange. So really beautiful for achieving those really intensive golden tones. Your next set of 3/4s. So we're coming into the copper range now. Your 3/4s are predominantly golden, but they've also got that little bit of copper to them as well. Your 3/7s are your gold brunettes. So as you come to the 0.7s, that's more of a brunette range, which we'll come across in a little bit. But they're like your golden brunettes, so they're your brunettes that are really warmed up with that gold movement through there. Your 0.4s are your coppers. So these particular coppers, when you're looking at them, they do sit more of a reddy kind of copper. So if you're looking for a real intensive orange copper, we often say kind of go for more of a 3/4 or kind of put a bit of 3 in your mix, because coppers do sit so close to red. So there's lots of different colour mixtures that you can use to achieve that, including your intensifiers, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Your 0.41s, which these coppers have a little bit of green in them, the green ash. And the reason being, what that does is it actually kills the red. So obviously when you look at your colour wheel itself, your green is right opposite your red. So when you're using a 4/1, the purpose of having that 0.1 in there is to eliminate the red tones and allow that copper to really shine through. So those are absolutely lovely for achieving your real sort of tangerine colours. Your 0.45s, so 0.5 is mahogany, okay? So 4/5 is basically a copper mahogany, so a warmed up mahogany. Your 0.5s are your pure mahoganies, and mahoganies are a mixture of red and violet. So generally they're quite cool reds, so they have got that cooler tone to them. Your 0.62s, so your 6 is your red and your 2 is your violet. So these are basically red violets. So again, a cooler red to achieve that cooler tone throughout. Rather than it being an orangey red, it's more of a violety red. Your 0.7s are your brunette ranges. So your brunettes are mixed up, but basically made a mix of red, orange and yellow. So they are predominantly warm colours. So when you're looking at your brunettes, look at where they sit in the colour wheel, and bear in mind they are generally warmer tones, so they're more of a natural brunette. But then variations on that, you've got the 0.71s. So your 0.71s, of course, have that green ash to them, so that helps to eliminate some of that red tone in there, allowing sort of it's a more muted brunette, more of a natural brunette, sort of verging on ash. Then you've got your 7/3s. So your 7/3s are a warmed up brunette, more of a golden brunette. And then you've got your 7/4s, which is your brunette copper. So you've got that copper tone kind of coming through. You've also got your 975 as well. And your 975 is absolutely beautiful because it is that brunette tone, but it's got that hint of mahogany to it. So it just adds that tint of rose to it. It's a really pretty colour. You've also got your 7/7s. So your 7/7s are brunette. So these are a little bit more intensive. So they're like similar to your 0.33s and your golds. They're more of an intensive brunette tone. Brilliant for when you're using it on white hair as well. Your 7/8s are your brunettes, but your 8 is your blue. So blue is designed to get rid of orange, so it helps to give that real toned down brunette. So it's still brunette, but it's a little bit flatter in colour, just so it doesn't shine through so orangey, and it fades off to a beautiful tone. The 7/8s are some of my favourite tones actually for brunettes. Your 9/3s. Now your 9 in Neal and Wolf is actually what we call a kind of a warm sand, and it's a mixture of violet and gold. So your 9/3 is like a violet gold basically. Again, really nice soft colours, and it just gives a really soft kind of beige effect to the hair. Beautiful for toning as well. Your 2/2s, so these are your violets now. now. So when you get into double digits, like I was saying earlier, they're much more intensive. So a 0.2 in Neal and Wolf is actually violet, but a 0.22 is violet, meaning that you get those real beautiful, vivid violet tones. Your next ones are your 4/4s. So these are your real intensive coppers. So real tangerine, beautiful, bright coppers. Then you've got a 4/6 as well, which is another mixed tone, but very, very popular. And your 4/6 is basically obviously your copper, but it's got that little bit of red to it as well. Your 6/6s are next, and your 6/6s is basically intensive reds. So they're your real eye-catching reds, and they go up right up to a level 8. So you can get those really beautiful, bright, light, stunning reds through there. Now, when you're looking at this whole booklet, obviously it is quite self-explanatory, so they do have everything above telling you exactly which colour you're choosing and where it's. Also got a little key to this as well, right at the bottom down here. And what this key is on some of these you will see an N, which is natural, a sun, meaning warm, and a little, basically a little snowflake, meaning cool. So when you're looking at these colours, it gives you a really good indication of what you're choosing, whether it's cool or warm. And then of course, like I said earlier, you've got your little mix bowl, which means that these colours are actually mixed, and it tells you underneath exactly how to mix them. So it looks like you've got much, much more than 129 shades there, and you have on here, but actually you've only got 129 shades to mix, and they're all intermixable, but it also means you don't have to have so many on your shelf, meaning that you don't have to have such a huge collection of colour. Now, another amazing thing about this colour is that you can use it as a permanent colour, as a demi-permanent, and as a temporary colour, and as a semi. So you basically have one tube of colour, and it does whatever you need it to. It just completely depends on how you mix. Stop there. Okay, so using the colour wheel, it's really important when you come to mixing your colours that you do, especially when you're new to Neal and Wolf, that you do use the colour wheel. And this is the reason why. A lot of people forget, or they kind of assume that they know where everything sits in the colour wheel, and I'm just the same for it sometimes. And sometimes I go to reach for a tube of colour and I'm like, no, just think about this for a second. So, and especially when you are changing colour lines, you do have to kind of take a step back and think about what you're mixing and why. So when you're using the colour wheel, it gives you a really good understanding of not only where the colours sit in Neal and Wolf, but also what you want to eliminate and what you want to see from your colour. So something that I always talk to people about is the pigment that's naturally in their hair. And Neal and Wolf, in their colour chart, they have where everything sits. So it is a really good colour chart to use because it's very clear and easy to get a good guide of what you want to see and what you want to eliminate. So for instance, the Lightening curve here, it has on there every single shade of hair colour, so 1 right up to a level 10, and in that shade is exactly what you will see as soon as you start to mix oxygen with the hair in any form of peroxide. So for instance, on a level 6, you're going to have red-orange tones in there. On a level 7, you're going to have orange tones, and then going up to a level 8, you've got kind of more orange-yellow tones, going through to 9 and 10, where you've got more yellow tones in there. So say for instance you're looking at your natural base, no colour on it, virgin hair, is a natural level 7. Regardless of what you see when you're looking at that hair, it's going to have orange tones to it. So if you've got someone sat in your chair and they go, I absolutely hate orange tones, I do not want to see any form of orange in my hair, you know that you have got to use something A with no orange in it, but B, you've also got to use something that does help to eliminate that orange that naturally is in their hair and will start to come through. So when you're looking at your colour wheel, your orange tones, if you look directly opposite, you're going to see that blue is the colour that you need to eliminate orange tones. So you can go in and use an intensifier if you choose to help to eliminate those orange tones. But there's different ways that you can do that, but you know from using your colour wheel what you don't want to see and what you've got to use to help you achieve that perfect colour for the client, and also doesn't fade off orange as well for them. Similar sort of thing again, so if you're looking at a level 5 for instance, you've got a lot of red tone in there. So again, if your client sat in a chair and she's got a natural base level 5 and they do not want to see any red in there whatsoever, you know that when you look opposite on the colour wheel of red, you've got green, and you know you've got to use something with a 0.1 in it to help to eliminate those red tones. So using your colour wheel, massively important to help you understand what you're choosing, but to also achieve those colours that you want to achieve. Now, another thing in there as well, the lightning curve, it helps you not only to understand exactly what you're going to see within your client's hair, but also where you're going from when you're lifting hair too. So if you're lifting from a level 5, you've got to go through that red-brown, red-orange, orange, obviously then right up through the yellow point before you get to blonde. So you know exactly kind of what peroxide you're going to need to use, you know how long you're going to have to leave it on for, because it really helps you to understand exactly what you've got to do when it comes to lightning, but also using high lift as well. High lift is something that we'll come to touch on a little bit later, but with high lift, it's absolutely vital that you use that lightning curve. With high lifts, I would personally say don't use anything at level 6 and below, because then it starts to go into brown and then it's really hard to achieve that nice blonde tone that people like with high lifts. But again, same sort of philosophy. If you're working on a level 6, you know that you've got a bit of red tone in there, you've got orange and you've got yellow. So you know that you're going to need to eliminate red with a 0.1. You're going to need to eliminate your orange tone, so you can need a blue, so 0.8. And you're also going to need some violet in there as well to eliminate any residual yellow tones. Because here's the thing, with a 0.1, a green, it will get rid of red beautifully, but it won't know what to do with orange tones or yellow tones. It's not designed to mute those tones. The same with 0.8, for instance, to eliminate orange. It will eliminate orange, but it won't eliminate red and it won't eliminate yellow. So you want to look at your lightning curve and you want to go from, say you're working on an orange base level 7, you're going to need a 0.8 in there with the blue tone, and you're also going to need a 0.2 in there to eliminate any residual yellow tones left over. So when you're choosing your Neal and Wolf colour, how to mix is really important. So for instance, you can mix permanent, you can mix it as a demi-permanent, you can mix it as a semi-permanent as well. And you can also use it as a temporary and as a glossing service. But first I'm going to cover permanent. So say for instance you choose a 4.3. So your 4.3, it can be used as obviously different services, but we're going to go with permanent today. We're going to be mixing it on 10 volt. The reason we choose 10 volt is because 10 volt is deposit only. So there's no lift in 10 volt. So you're going to be mixing that, and you're going to be mixing 1 part colour to 1.5 parts of 10 volt. Okay, so say for instance you're mixing 30 grams of colour, you're going to be mixing 45 grams of 10 volt. We always use grams purely because it's a much more precise way of measuring. Now when you're looking at your permanent mixture, you can leave it on for 30 minutes, or if you're working on white hair, you're going to be leaving it on for up to 45 minutes. Now say for instance you choose the same 4.3, but you want to mix it as a demi-permanent, okay, or a quasar, depending on how you were taught. So we're looking at 4.3 and we're going to be mixing it as a demi. What we're going to do is we're going to put 4.3 in the bowl, and we're going to do the same again. So we're going to use 30 grams of 4.3, but we're going to be doubling up on our peroxide, and we're going to be choosing 5 volt, which is for your demi and your semi-permanents and your glossing service, okay? So you're going to be using 1 part of 4.3, so 30 grams, and you can be using 2 parts of 5 volt, which is then 60 grams of 5 volt. Now what we do say is when you are mixing it up as demi colour, you want to mix the ammonia out. So in Neal and Wolf there is a very small percentage of ammonia, and it's calibrated, meaning that when you go down to a level 1, it's got a very, very low amount of ammonia in, whereas if you go up to a 12 plus in our high lift range, it's got a maximum of 2.6% ammonia. So the ammonia is higher where it needs to be in a high lift, for instance, but really low the lower down the colour chart that you go. So what you want to do is when you put your 4.3 in the bowl, you want to give it a really good mix and beat out that ammonia. I always say give it a good mix and leave it for a few minutes just to let that ammonia evaporate. And then put in your 5 volt, so your 60 grams of 5 volt, and mix again. And just give it a really good mix before you apply it. And I would again say leave it for a few minutes. Just to make sure that all that ammonia is gone and it turns into a true demi-permanent. So you can also use a higher peroxide if you need to. So say for instance we're choosing a level 7. We're going to go over a natural level 7 just to keep it nice and easy. So we're going to go with level 7, and she's got, say for instance, a natural base of a 5. You're going to need 2 levels of lift. So what we would then look at is the peroxide level and what peroxides do. So on your 5 volt, that is designed for semi-permanents, toners and things like that. On your 10 volt, it's developed for depositing only, there's no lift. When you're looking at your 20 volt, you're going to get 1 to 2 levels of lift out of that. And this is the reason why we say 1 to 2 levels. If you're working on very thick, coarse hair, you're going to get 1 level of lift out of it. Whereas if you're working on finer hair, you're going to easily get 2 levels of lift out of it. Because of the hair structure, the density of the hair, it will depend on the lift that you get. So if you're working on 20 volt, 1 to 2 levels. If you're working on 30 volt, we say that's basically sort of 2 to 3 levels. So that is actually where we would want our level 7 to be. So if we're mixing level 7 and we want at least 2 levels of lift, and it's kind of normal hair, I would say actually opt for your 30 volt, because that will guarantee you that 2 levels of lift. Now, of course, we're talking on virgin hair. If you've got level 5 but it's been coloured, of course you're going to have to look at bleaching that, because as we all know, colour doesn't lift colour. So 30 volt for your level 7 when you're looking to get 2 levels of lift. You can then, if you need to, go up to your 40 volt, and that will get you 3 up to actually 5 levels of lift when you're using it with a high lift, but we generally say 3 to 4 levels with colour, or up to 5 levels with high lift. So again, depending on what you're doing with it, will depend on the peroxide that you choose. So when you're mixing it as a permanent, you can go higher up on your peroxides if you need to, or you can use your 10 volt. If you're mixing it on a Demi, you're going to be using 5 volt, and you can do 1 part colour, 2 parts peroxide. If you're mixing it as a semi, same rules apply, but semis generally tend to be more of our toner line. So we'll cover toners a little bit later, but semi-permanent, you're going to be looking at mixing 1 part toner, 2 parts peroxide. You can also use the toners and any of the colours as a glossing service. And the glossing service is relatively new to Neal & Wolf, but actually one of my favourite things to be using right now. And this is the reason why. The way that we mix it actually helps to bring the pH right down, so it basically like neutralises any form of ammonia in there. So you get a true ammonia-free colour, bring the pH right down. But what it also does is it helps to even out the porosity of the hair. So when you're toning hair that's really porous or quite compromised, it's actually a beautiful service to use, because you can use it root to tip and the toner will take beautifully evenly. So when you're doing a glossing service, you would basically be mixing 1 part of your toner or the colour, depending on what you need to achieve. Then you'd also be mixing 1 part of ritual conditioner. So the ritual conditioner, the reason why we chose to use this one, we did lots of different experiments within Neal & Wolf, but the ritual conditioner came out trumps, and it's purely because of the pH of the ritual conditioner. It brings it right down. Because when you're looking at the pH of ammonia, ammonia sits at about 9.5 on the pH scale, whereas the ritual conditioner sits a lot lower down on the pH scale, bringing that pH down, turning it into a truly ammonia-free colour. And so when you're mixing it up, you're going to be mixing 1 part toner, 1 part ritual conditioner, and 2 parts of your 5 volt. Mix it all together. There's no need to leave it like you would with a Demi permanent, but you mix it all together and you apply it root to tip, and it can be left on up to 20 minutes. The same as with a Demi permanent as well. So both the Demi permanent and the glossing service are both 20 minutes. Now, of course, you can, with the glossing service, take it off a little bit earlier if you need to. And if it looks done as well, you're going to know better than anyone else when your client's hair is done. So you can take it off earlier, and there are times where I leave it on for 10 minutes and that's all that it needs. But personally speaking, the glossing service, one of my favourite ones, and definitely only use the ritual conditioner because we've done lots of different formulations, tried it lots of different ways, and that is the one that comes out trumps and brings the pH right down to turn it into a true glossing service. Now, with the glossing service, you're looking at it lasting anywhere between sort of 10 to 12 washes. So it's a little bit less time than a demi-permanent, but a little bit longer than a semi-permanent. So it kind of fits right between the two when you're looking at kind of the structure of permanent, really. And then, of course, you do move on to your high lifts and your white coverage. So with the high lifts, we always tend to say use 40 volt. Now, obviously, it mixes the same as most high lifts, which is 1 part high lift, 2 parts 40 volt. And you can leave this on anywhere between 45 up to 60 minutes, dependent on the lift that you need. So when you're using that, again, when we covered the lightning curve, you want to be looking at what you need to neutralise and what high lifts you need. And obviously then going from there with your 40 volt, leaving it on up to 60 minutes. Now, another thing as well, so we're going to be covering the white coverage. So with white coverage, a little bit different mixing wise, only in that you're going to be leaving it on for 45 minutes. So when you're looking at depositing, most of the time you're leaving it on for 30 minutes. With this one, because white hair actually has no pigment to it, you're going to want to leave it on for the full 45 minutes to get your perfect white coverage. So when it comes to covering white hair, I often say to people, well, there's 2 different categories. Is it resistant or is it normal white hair? And a lot of people get the categories mixed up. And that's quite common actually, because a lot of the time we look at coarse, wiry white hair and think, oh, that's got to be resistant. Actually, it's the opposite. So coarse, wiry hair, especially being in the white category, is actually normal white hair. That's pretty normal. Whereas when you look at the resistant category of white hair, it's very, very shiny and it lays very flat. And here's the biggest difference of the two. So normal white hair looks coarse, like wiry. That's got a normal amount of cuticle layers. When you're looking at the really resistant white hair, it's very flat and it lies very shiny, and that's because it can have 7 to 10 times the amount of cuticle layers on there. So you think about how much more colour has got to get through those cuticles in order to for it to even get into the cortex. That is why we have the naturals and the point zeros. The point zeros are designed with more pigment, so they actually help to get into the hair cortex and really deposit more tone for hair that is quite smooth and flat and resistant. Whereas the naturals are perfectly adequate at covering up your normal white hair. So when you look at the amount of white hair, that will then come into how much either 0.0 or natural you need to use. So for instance, if you're looking at 0 to 30% white hair, you could just choose your, say, 8.3. You could just choose that quite happily, and that would cover up to 30% of white hair. If you're looking in the category of sort of 30 to 50% white hair, that is when you'd start looking at adding in your natural or your 0.0. So I would personally say you're looking at adding in sort of 25% of your natural or your 0.0, so say an 8 for instance. You can add in 25% of your 8 to then 75% of your 8.3. And then that would give you that little bit more coverage that you need. If you're then looking at anything 50% upwards, you'd be using half and half. So dependent on whether it's resistant white hair or normal white hair, you could use your 8.0, 8.3, half and half, and that would give you more coverage and ensure that you get that white coverage. So when we're looking at white coverage, we often say mix it 1 to 1.5 on 10 volts, the same as when you're mixing permanent. However, if you have got really, really resistant white hair to the point where it just won't cover, here's when I recommend switching. I would then say mix 1 to 1, so 1 part colour, 1 part peroxide, and I'd actually go in with 20 volt, purely because 20 volt has a little bit more power, but not only that, because you're then pigmenting a lot of colour, the 20 volt stops it from going too dark. So obviously with that in mind, don't use your 10 volt, use your 20 volt, otherwise it might go a little bit darker. So if you do need to do that, you can do, so there are 2 different formulations for white coverage. But I would honestly, hands down, say that like 99% of the time, I use like a natural, and the tone that they choose on 10 volt, mixed 1 to 1.5, 45 minutes, you get a beautiful, beautiful coverage with those white hairs. With your high lifts within Neal and Wolf, you've got a really good array to choose from. Personally, I was never a fan of high lifts until I used Neal and Wolf ones. They lift beautifully, you get a beautiful blonde tone through there, and you've got a good amount to choose from, so you can really neutralise any unwanted tones. Now, like we covered earlier with the high lift mixing, you're going to be wanting to mix 1 part colour, 2 parts of your 40 volt, and you're going to need to leave them on anywhere between 45 and 60 minutes, depending on the lift that you need. Now, of course, colour doesn't lift colour, so high lift isn't going to lift through already colour treated hair. So in that aspect, I would choose to opt for a bleach if you want to achieve a blonde tone. But if you're working on natural hair, high lifts absolutely phenomenal at giving that beautiful blonde tone without being too blonde if you want a softer blonde tone. So you've got your 11 series, and your 11 series are basically double pigmented. So they've got a real rich, intense pigment, brilliant for eliminating any unwanted warmth. So when you're looking at your colour wheel, you want to be choosing exactly what you're looking to eliminate. So for instance, if you're looking to eliminate orange on a level 7 or 8, you're going to be looking to use something with a 0.8 in it, so your blue tone. And you've got an 11.8 there, which is absolutely phenomenal at doing so. If you're working a little bit darker, your 8.1, so your 11.81 is absolutely beautiful because it's got that little bit of green ash, so it helps to eliminate any red pigment coming through. And your 2.2, again, that's violet based, so that will eliminate any yellow tones that you don't want in there. And I would always recommend using a mix, because 11.8, for instance, is going to eliminate blue. It's going to eliminate orange because it's blue, but it's not going to eliminate any yellow. So you're going to be left with yellow tones in there if you don't use a violet-based one to help to eliminate any yellow tones. Then you move on to your 12s and your 12 plus. Your 12 plus have got a slightly higher amount of ammonia in, and with the higher amount of ammonia, it means that you get more lift. So when you are lifting, you can get 5 levels of lift out of the 12 plus series. So personally speaking, they are some of my favourite high lifts to use. And even though they have got a higher amount of ammonia in, it's not so much that it's going to damage someone's hair. You still get a beautiful shine and brilliant condition with this colour line, even using the 12 plus. So in the 12 plus series, you've got a 1-1, a 1-1-3 and a 2-2. And personally, I tend to stick with kind of the same. I have a favourite mixture which I'm going to share with you because it works day in, day out whenever I'm using a high lift. Your 12-1-1 is a green, so it gets rid of any red tones that are coming through. Your 12-2-2 is violet, so it's going to get rid of any yellowy tones that you find in there. And I tend to put the 11-8 in there as well, and I mix equal parts of each, because then you've got any reddy tones eliminated, you've got any orangey tones eliminated, and you've got any yellow tones eliminated as well, leaving you a beautiful clean blonde that is like a real creamy blonde. And one of my favourite mixtures to use. Now, if you're looking to get more lift out of this range, they have a special little colour down here, which is 000, and it's a lightning boost. Don't be fooled, it's not a clear gloss, it's an ammonia boost. So you can use this in things like white coverage, but most commonly used in high lift. And what the ammonia boost does is it just gives that high lift, or gives your white coverage a little bit more of a boost and a little bit more power. So when you're using it in white coverage, you can literally just put 10 grams in your colour mixture, just add it on top, just to literally give a boost to your colour and to allow that colour to penetrate further. But you can use it in your high lift range, and you can use up to 50% of your colour mix. So say for instance you've mixed 40 grams of high lift and you've done 80 grams of peroxide. You can then add in 20 grams, so it's 40% at 50% of your 40 grams that you've just put in, so 20 grams of 000. You don't adjust your peroxide level or anything like that, and what that does is it just gives it that boost that you need, and it helps to give it that extra half a level of lift. So you can get a really good lift out of Neal and Wolf high lifts. Now, another thing that you will see on this page are our toners and our intensifiers. So your toning series, you've got a mix through there of ash to violet, and you've also got your, what I love to call your Californian blonde, which is a 7-3. So it's a brunette gold, and it gives that real sort of soft golden hue with a little bit of depth to it, which is, like I said, Californian blonde through and through. So you've got your 1001, which is obviously your 0 is more of a bluey tone. So when you look on your colour wheel, it sits at around a blue. And your 0.1, which is obviously your green, your 1002, and your 1089. Now, with your 10s, I always refer to this colour coffee. So with your toning series, you've got kind of 3 different sets. You've got your 10s, your 90s, and then your 99s. And I always refer to this as coffee because it kind of helps you to understand it is in terms of strength. So your 10s, I always say they're like your normal toners, your 1 shot of coffee, your regular coffee. Your 90s are like your 2 shots of coffee, a little bit more intense, more pigment to it. And your 99s are like serious espresso triples right here. They are really intense toners, a lot of pigment. So when you are looking for more of that like real reduction in yellowy, orangey tones, your 9902, absolutely beautiful at that. And one of my favourite for rose blondes and things like that, your 99.25. So it's your violet with a bit of mahogany to it. Gives an absolutely beautiful rose tone to the hair. So when you look at your toners, you mix them as a semi-permanent. So you mix 1 part of your toner, your chosen one, to 2 parts of 5 volt, and you mix and apply. And then you can, one of my favourite services, the glossing service, you can then add in 1 part of your ritual conditioner, which helps to even out porosity. But one of the best things it does, it stops it lifting on natural hair as well. If you've got quite fine hair or quite light natural hair, I often find that a lot of toners across the board will lift the hair colour slightly. So if you add in your ritual conditioner, stops it in its tracks. It's a godsend. So I generally, most of the time, do toners as a glossing service, not only just for the porosity and the no ammonia aspect of it, but it does not lift on any natural hair colour. Then you come in to your intensives. So when it comes to your intensifiers, there's different ways of using these. With your intensifiers, you've got lots of different ones to choose from, going from greens through to violets, through to your coppers, your reds, and your blues with your greys in there as well. So when it comes to choosing an intensifier, it depends on what you need to intensify really. So say for instance you're using a red and you want to really make that red pop. You've got 3 different types here to choose from. You've got your 056, which is your mahogany red, it's a slightly cooler red. You've got your 065, which is your red with a little bit of cool tone to it. And then you've also got your 066, which is really red. So depending on what tones you want to achieve will depend on which one you choose. But the way that you use them is the same. So if you're mixing up, say, 6666, so you're going for a bright red on a level 6, you would mix up your colour. So you'd mix up, say, 40 grams of your 6666. Then you'd mix up 60 grams of your 10 volt or 20 volt, depending on what you're going for. And then you would add in 50% of whatever intensifier you're actually choosing. So with your intensifiers, if you want more of a cooler tone, I always tend to go for 056 because that's got that little bit of mahogany to it, so it really does add a coolness to the red, and it gives it a real sort of cherry tone. Whereas if you're wanting that pillar box red, the 066 is perfect for that. So, say we're going to choose our 066, we're going to go for a real vivid red. You basically mix up, so 40 grams of colour, 60 grams of peroxide, and then you add in 50% of your intensifier. So 50% of the colour that you've just put in. So 50% of 40 grams is 20 grams. You add in 20 grams of 066. You don't adjust your peroxide level or anything like that. You just add that in and mix it up, and then away you go. It doesn't affect the lift, it doesn't affect the timing or anything like that. It just is an intensifier to really give that colour a pop and create that real vivid vibrancy. Now, you can use them on their own as well, and you can mix them as a semi-permanent in that you can mix, say, 022, it's a real vivid purple. You can mix that, so 1 part of that, 2 parts of your 5 volt left on for 20 minutes. it's going to give a real vibrant purple tone to the hair. It's not going to last like a permanent, but if you're looking for that real like crazy colour kind of colour, then the 022 absolutely beautiful for that. Same as any of the other colours on there. If you want to use them as a semi-permanent or just to refreshen a red, for instance, you can use them as a semi-permanent. Now you've also got your grey series on here. The grey series are basically there to be used as a grey, or you can add them into your colour. So as a grey, you'd mix them up as a semi-permanent again, so you'd do 2 parts of your 5-fold to 1 part of your either grey, light grey or dark grey. The difference between those is that light grey is made up of more violet tones, your grey is more of a violet blue, and your dark grey is more of a blue violet with a little bit of green to it. So depending on how much depth of ash you want in there and how much pigment you want to see, whether you need to kind of eliminate more orangey tones and you're going with your grey, will depend on which one you choose out of that. They're not any necessarily deeper than each other, but the more ash that's in a colour, the deeper it will appear. Now, you can use the intensifiers as well to help to neutralise. So we often go by the rule of 8 on this. And the rule of 8 is where you start from a level of an 8 going right down to a 1. We don't use intensifiers to neutralise on anything above a level 8 because intensifiers are so strong that if you were to use them in a 9 or a 10, for instance, it would be overpowering. So say you're on a level 6, for instance. A level 6, you'd actually be, to get to 8, you'd be counting 2. So when you're looking in a shade chart, from a level 6 to get to 8, it's 2 places. So this works when you're mixing 30 grams of colour and 45 gram peroxide. Any more than 30 grams of colour, you're going to have to up your intensifier. So if you're working with 30 grams of colour, 45 gram peroxide, and you're working on level 6, and say you need to use, you've got a lot of orange in the hair, and you decide to use 088 to neutralise the orange tones, because blue neutralises orange, you would go in with 2 grams of intensifier, just on top of your mix. If you were going in on a level 7, if you're on a level 7 already, you would actually go in with 1 gram. So to get to 8, you'd add 1 gram of intensifier. And if you go lower down, so say for instance you're on level 3 or a 4, on a 4 to get to 8, it's 4 grams. So say you want to again use the 088 to eliminate orange, and you're on level 4, you'd use 4 grams of intensifier because there's 4 places to get to 8. And on 3 grams you'd use 5, and then going down. So the lower that you are in the shade chart, the darker your colour, the more intensifier you can use to help to neutralise any unwanted tones. So they can be used in different ways. With Neal and Wolf colour, we find that the fade off is really, really good. So it just doesn't fade. The colours last really, really nicely. And that's because of the micromolecule technology. So with smaller pigments, it allows the colour to get further into the hair shaft, but it actually adheres better as well, because once it's in the cortex, it then bonds onto itself to create a bigger molecule of colour. So not only does it take less ammonia and less stress on the hair, so less stress on the cuticle to actually get that colour into the hair, because it's a smaller molecule, as soon as it gets into the hair, it then rebonds with other colour molecules and creates a big molecule, therefore less fallout, less fade. So fade-wise, with the micromolecule technology, it lasts really, really well in the hair, and that's how you get such beautiful white coverage because of that technology. Now, in saying that, the use of the correct products is really important. So we recommend that you not only use Neal and Wolf Developer with the colour to make sure that it adheres properly into the hair, but you're using the Neal and Wolf products as well to make sure that A, you have the right colour protection. All of the shampoos and conditioners in Neal and Wolf are colour protect safe, so they will protect the hair from any loss of colour and any fading, which is especially important when you've got your brighter tones and more vivid colours and your toners of pores. So with that in mind, Neal and Wolf shampoos and conditioners all the way, but not only that, they have the UV protection in. So they stop the sun from damaging the hair, because the sun can actually damage the hair and fade off a lot of colour very, very quickly. And sun penetrates into the hair cortex much further than the sun penetrates into our skin. So not only are the Neal and Wolf shampoos and conditioners perfect for stopping fading, but they're also really good at stopping UV damage. So the use of the right products is really, really important. Now, another little tip and trick that I'm going to share with you guys before we go today is the reload. Now, when it comes to the Reload series, these are absolutely fantastic. They can be used as standalone toners, but not only that, you can put a little bit into your colour, because with the colour molecules in the Reload range, they're bigger molecules. And what they do is they sit more kind of in the cuticle layer. So they don't sit inside the hair, they kind of add, they help to fill the holes, and they add that colour where needed. So you can either use them on their own as a toner, and we've got a whole different range of colours, including reds, coppers, brunettes, champagne, which is like a really nice beige blonde, and also our most popular one, the River Pearl, which is silver. Not only can you use them on their own, you can put them into your colour. And what that does is, especially with really porous hair types, so I put them a lot in toners, with really porous hair types, they tend to have gaps in the structure of their hair because it is quite compromised. And what Reload does with the bigger colour molecule, it helps to fill those gaps, and it keeps that toner and it keeps that colour lasting longer. So absolutely fantastic on their own as a standalone toner, but brilliant when just literally 10 gram or so is used in your colour or in your toner to help it adhere better and to keep it lasting longer.